Hey, review family, keep it tight. My name is Jay Morse, the review guy, and I'm back again to bring you another video. And in this one, I'm going to be covering the new Brockhampton album entitled Ginger. Brockhampton, the massive hip-hop collective and pseudo-boy band. I said pseudo, don't sue me. Kicking it since 2015. They've released 4 studio-length albums before this, all of which have released acclaim across the board by both critics and fans alike for the camaraderie, the truthful, forceful lyrics, the just straight focus that all of these records had, as well as the lavish production and everything in between. Brockhampton have always shifted between different musical styles at their own leisure, projecting their own individuality and own identities into these own lyrical components and compartments that all fit in to make this massive jigsaw puzzle. Section after section, adding their own spice into the cauldron that is their eclectic style, like a bunch of people walking up to a campfire when it's just completely pitch black and the only thing lighting them is that bonfire, that campfire in the middle of the darkness, that beacon of light. They all walk up and warm their hands and put their hands up. It lights each of their faces up and each of their bodies up. It lets them portray their story, and when they're done, they walk off and the next one comes up. Each member bringing their own vocal style and their own vocal range and their own lyrical talent and lyrical style and putting it all on page. Their success and their ability to be so easy to listen to and so cohesive is completely and totally admirable when you consider just how unorthodox and strange this massive puzzle is. This is not a typical band. These are separate, tortured artists that just happen to coincide with each other and just happen to put it all together in this major blossoming tapestry of friendship and positivity, mental health struggle, and wittiness and everything else. But always keeping it in such a way that whether it's blunt or whether it's poetic, it still has this twang and this tinge of mature songwriting and knowing exactly what they're going to do from moment to moment to moment, making it all feel like a logical beast as opposed to a bunch of different people coming together to try to do their own thing but calling it a joint project. This feels like a joint project. So I was sitting there editing and I was thinking about something that I didn't really mention in the video. This album builds on everything that they did on their previous records pretty nicely, specifically Iridescence and kind of Saturation, but they tended to do different things on Saturation, but for the most part it feels like a logical follow-up to what they did on their past album, although I think the definitive instrumental influence on this album has to be, bar none, hands down, Outkast. Anyone familiar with Outkast's discography is going to instantly feel this familiarity from Outkast. I think Kevin Abstract even said that a lot of this record was inspired by Hey Ya, and it just exudes that feel. Although I will say it's not just every single track, some more than others. I'm really enjoying a lot of the choruses on this album, whether it's one of the portions where they slip into some gospel-esque, soul-esque vocal melodies, or the portions they gang up to create some intriguing, simplistic but effective vocal lines. They have choruses and hooks just down pat, just smack down, silly putty flat. But that's to be expected, and that's something about this album. You expect quite a bit going into a Brockhampton project at this point, which either works in the band's favor or doesn't, because on one hand, it's good to have an expectation that you want to live up to, a bar you want to live up to, but at the same time, it leaves a lot more room for error and failure when you consider so many people are holding you in this high regard that you're releasing album after album that are getting so much acclaim, so much notoriety, so much publicity. You're getting critics and listeners alike just attaching to you and clinging to you, can't get enough of you. What are you going to do when you have to drop another album and live up to that hype and expectation? Luckily, I think they did a damn good job with Ginger. It just feels more mature. Not only does it feel a lot of times more accessible even than some of their previous more abstract and alternative hip-hop vibes, not that that doesn't carry over here, the alt hip-hop vibes are still there in spades. It's just, this feels more mature. This feels like a lot of these tracks could be played on the radio, even if some of the lyrical themes are just kind of deep, kind of cryptic at times, but blunt at other times, poetic at other times. Brockhampton's one major contradiction. And as for the patterns of who gets their chance to shine at different points, Brockhampton has kind of had this formula down pat for a while and have been succeeding at it. It doesn't really change here. It honestly does function kind of like a boy band. Yes, some of the palette choices of instrumentals are fresh on this record, but at the core of this band, it's about a group coming together to bring about their witty lyricism, their cynicism, their positivity, their depression, their own struggles, and their camaraderie. And some things you wouldn't necessarily expect, some very specific stories that really tug at the heartstrings, mostly coming from Kevin Abstract more than anyone else. Like things that aren't tedious or run-of-the-mill or mundane, that don't necessarily fit just into a square or a circle. More gray area stuff is what I'm getting at. But as usual, despite the camaraderie and the tight-knit friendship that these people obviously share, it's difficult to really dissect from a dissecting point of view every single verse contained in these tracks, because much like any other Brockhampton project, and it's not necessarily their fault, even though they boast a lot of talent, there's always a standout. In my personal opinion, I do think that Kevin Abstract continues to be one of the best MCs that Brockhampton has to boast. His verses remain to be some of the most serious, emotional, and hard to escape, like on the track Boy Bye. Speaking of Boy Bye, I like this track. It's dominated by the verses of Dom, Matt, Kevin, and Bearface, whereas the others appear exclusively on the choruses. This smooth, snapping beat with skittering notes that appear and disappear, despite its very short length, both functioning as a single and on the album, it's one of my favorites, and they compact and pack a lot into these choruses and verses, and it just flows very smoothly, and it really shows that, despite being early into their career, Brockhampton does what many tight-knit groups that have been around for decades can't do, and that is just write solid tunes, solid songwriting. Heaven Belongs to You is Slow Tie. It's Slow Tie. I'm not comparing this track to Slow Tie. It's Slow Tie. If you liked his new record, which a lot of people did, you'll love this track. I'm just so impressed by how this album continues to have so many things that stick out in my head vividly, little bits and pieces. I can sit here and dissect each verse, but I don't necessarily need to, because you already know that Brockhampton is consistent with their lyrical and vocal performances. The main thing that I personally with this review think is important is to discuss how they utilize their production, how they utilize what is given to them, how they execute their formula that they've been working with for a while, and pretty much everything from a technical point of view. And luckily, it's really good. If You Pray Right is a lavishly produced track with just the background ad-libs being treated in a very interesting, clean and smooth way. The equalization of every member's vocals being treated very, very well. The layering being treated very, very well. I'm loving this horn-led beat. It's very funky almost, all the way up until the end where it glitches out and comes into more soul territory, more gospel territory, which I can't get enough of, which appears much more prominently on the next track, Dearly Departed. A shimmering jazz and neo-soul vibe and a half with an extremely emotionally poignant, expressive opening verse by Kevin Abstract, followed immediately by Joba delivering this just extremely vibrant, God, I love this chorus. I'm not necessarily sure if it's his vocal delivery or the way it rings out into oblivion, but either way, it's so luxurious, it's like ambrosia. And some of these shouts of why on the ending part of the chorus really remind me of something that almost David Bowie could have come up with, or even something from a Queen project. Just some very expressive, powerful singing that Freddie Mercury would have done. And then straight away, they just catapult back into a more hard-hitting, just rougher sound with I've Been Born Again. And I use the word rough loosely. There's some editing on the vocals that are somewhat like that previous Injury Reserve album that dropped a bit ago. And although this is a little bit more hard and less lavish in terms of comparing the two, there's still something about this swaying beat, and a lot of these swaying beats, that even though if they don't go for that neo-soul or jazz or gospel vibe, that it just has this natural swagger to it. Let me just tell you, this is one of the most interesting hip-hop records that I've heard this entire year. I was so excited for Brockhampton to come out with a new record, because I've heard the singles and I was thinking about doing them for track review, but I really wanted to leave it blind. I wanted to just go into this record and see it for myself if I enjoyed it. And I must say, this is an expressive, powerful record that ups the accessibility but doesn't downgrade the emotional vigor of the performances and the lyrical components. The production does not get too sanitized, it does not feel too groomed, it does not feel too sanitary like a lot of rap nowadays. It doesn't feel so groomed by the industry that it's unrecognizable and just has no life to it. Each of these tracks function perfectly. They slide along perfectly. The camaraderie and friendship of each member in Brockhampton slide along like ice, and even though they're bringing on each individual style that is very different than the next, and each one has their own individual story, individual spice, individual lyrical components that they want to bring forward to the table, it all comes together in this cohesive beast that makes each track not only easy to listen to, but hard to dissect in their cryptic nature, to where as you're listening to it, they're easy to listen to, but there's so much more beneath the surface that gives all of these tracks more texture, more depth, more dimension, and I can't get enough of this record. I'm going to be giving this record an 8.5 out of 10, and that is a wrap. Please stay for the on-screen links of videos that you might be interested in. Have you heard this new Brockhampton album, Ginger? If you have, let me know in the comment section below what you thought of it. I would love to discuss the record with you. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you'd like to join the review family. We would love to have you here. Like this video if you enjoyed it. It'll help me out a lot. And smash that notification bell to be notified of my future uploads. My name is Jay Morris, the Review Guy. You know who it is. And I'm signing off saying farewell.